His smile was the kind of smile people expected from someone worth billions, warm enough to look approachable, controlled enough to look wise, polished enough to suggest that life always bent in his favor. The cameras loved it, his PR team insisted on it, and for most of his adult life, it had served him well. But it vanished the moment she asked her question. It happened at a conference that was supposed to celebrate the future of work. The stage glowed with soft blue lighting, the sort used to make speakers look visionary. Rows of attendees, startup founders, policy makers, tech enthusiasts, and people who had simply been given free tickets, watched with varying degrees of interest. The billionaire on stage had just finished a rehearsed monologue about opportunity, innovation, and a future where anyone, anywhere, can achieve anything. His words floated through the room like the smell of expensive cologne, pleasant enough, but too controlled to feel real. He had been talking for nearly 40 minutes when the moderator announced they would open the floor to questions. A dozen hands shot up, most belonging to young men eager to ask about funding, algorithms, or strategies for building generational wealth. The billionaire leaned forward, smiling the same practiced smile he had used in interviews, on magazine covers, and at shareholder meetings. Then the moderator saw her. She wasn't dressed like anyone else in the room. No blazer, no lanyard decorated with startup stickers, no laptop open on her knees. Just a worn gray sweater, jeans that looked like they'd survived too many wash cycles, and hair pulled back in a way that suggested she had rushed to get here. Her name was Marissa, 34, mother of two, the kind of person whose daily life bore almost no resemblance to the world being described on stage. The microphone reached her hands. She didn't stand, perhaps from nerves, perhaps because she was too tired, but she lifted her chin and met the billionaire's eyes with a steadiness that made the room quiet. "I appreciate your ideas," she said, her voice carrying farther than she expected. "But can I ask you something practical?" The billionaire smiled again, ready to charm. "Of course." She took a small breath. "What would you do if you were me?" The billionaire's head tilted, still smiling. "I'm not sure I understand." Marissa cleared her throat. "I'm a single mom. I work 2 jobs. And no matter how many hours I work, I can't afford rent, good childcare, or even car repairs when something breaks. You talk a lot about opportunity and how technology is making things easier, but what would you actually do if you were living my life? My exact life. 2 kids, no partner, unreliable transportation, rising rent, and a job market that says, entry level, but still requires 3 years of experience. What would you do?" The smile vanished. It didn't fade. It disappeared, cleanly, completely, like someone had switched off a light. The billionaire blinked, caught off guard in a way that no journalist or competitor or policy maker had managed to do in years. The audience felt the shift. The air went still. For the first time since stepping onto the stage, the billionaire had no prepackaged response. The moderator tried to intervene, gently saying, "We can take a different." "No," Marissa said, still calm, still steady. "I want to know." It wasn't a question meant to embarrass him. That was the part that startled him most. Her tone held no hostility, no accusation. It was sincere, exhausted, human, and he had no script for sincerity. He opened his mouth, and for a moment the billionaire, the man who had once negotiated a multi-billion-dollar acquisition while on a treadmill, looked genuinely lost. "Well," he began slowly, "I suppose the first step would be to look for opportunities to skill up. The digital economy offers." Marissa shook her head, not disrespectfully, just firmly. "I don't have time to skill up. I barely sleep. I can't attend classes. I can't take unpaid internships. I don't have family to help with childcare." So again, what would you do? Someone in the front row uncrossed their arms. Someone else stopped typing. People began leaning forward. They weren't listening to the billionaire anymore. They were listening to her. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the armrest, searching his mind for the polished optimism he usually deployed. It wasn't there. I'm not sure I can answer that," he admitted, voice smaller now. "Why not?" she asked. "Isn't the future you're describing supposed to help people like me?" He swallowed. Yes, of course, but it doesn't," she said softly. "At least not yet, and sometimes it feels like people in your position don't really understand how far away this future is for us. We're drowning now." The word landed with the weight of something undeniable. Drowning. He could feel the room watching him, expecting him to respond with something inspiring, something visionary, Something that would restore the comfortable illusion that everything would work out if everyone worked hard enough. For years, he had spoken about disruption and innovation as though they were inevitable forces of nature. But here, faced with a woman who worked harder than anyone he knew and still lived on the edge of collapse, those words felt hollow. He looked at her, and for the first time in the entire conference, he saw not an audience but a person. "I don't know what I would do," he said quietly. "I don't know how hard your life is. And I don't think I've designed anything that actually addresses what you're describing." His honesty startled even him. Marissa didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply nodded, as if she already knew the answer long before she asked the question. "Then maybe," she said gently, "before building the future, you should talk to the people who are stuck in the present." There it was, the sentence that made half the audience inhale. The billionaire sat back in his chair, the silence around him pressing like gravity. His mind raced, not with solutions, not with PR strategies, but with the startling realization that he had never once asked himself what survival looked like for someone living on minimum wage. He had built platforms that connected millions, but he had never connected with someone like her. He had spoken about empowerment, but he had never noticed who had no power to begin with. Innovation, he suddenly understood, meant nothing if it lifted only the people already standing. The moderator, sensing the moment had stretched too long, cleared his throat. "Thank you, Marissa. We appreciate your question." But appreciation was not the right word. What she had done was something else, something rare and unsettling. She had punctured the narrative. When the session ended, the billionaire walked backstage without answering another question. His team hovered, preparing to smooth over whatever headlines might come from the exchange. But he wasn't listening. He was thinking about how easily he had spoken of opportunity, as if it were a vending machine anyone could access. He was thinking of her tired voice, her steady gaze, her refusal to let him escape into abstractions. He was thinking of the simple, impossible things she had asked. "What would you do if you were me?" Hours later, the clip went viral. People argued in the comments, some saying she had embarrassed him, others saying she had been brave, many admitting they had asked themselves the same question countless times. In every version of the clip, one detail stood out. Not her trembling hands, not her tired sweater, not the billionaire's polished suit. It was the moment his smile disappeared, the moment he realized that the world he was building had blind spots big enough to swallow entire lives. And though the internet would eventually move on, he didn't. The next morning, he asked his team to arrange meetings, not with CEOs, not with policymakers, but with single parents, gig workers, people living paycheck to paycheck. He didn't know yet what he would build, or whether he had the courage to follow through. But for the first time in a long time, he was no longer smiling. He was listening, and sometimes, that is where real change begins.